Supreme International sold guayaberas and T-shirts at the wholesale level before embarking on a journey to take over Perry Ellis. The company then grew to license iconic brands and manufacture its own private labels that could be found in Saks Fifth Avenue, Kohl's, Macy's and the likes. But the company has faced performance troubles, up to the point that the founder was nearly pushed out. Let's dive in to see what happened. Before diving into the clothing business, George Feldenkrais started a car parts business. He had immigrated to the US with barely anything. But he had experience in importing car parts from Japan to Cuba. When the business started taking off, he founded a new company, Supreme International Corporation, in 1967 that would focus on importing shirts from Japan. Supreme's offerings grew to include other clothing items, which were distributed to stores such as Sears and J.C. Penney. But Supreme was still a small division amongst the other growing ones. Before continuing, I should probably mention that Supreme International has nothing to do with the other skateboarding and clothing Supreme brand. Alright, here we go. In the 1980s, George's son, Oscar, got more involved in Supreme and started expanding the business. He started bringing Italian brands to the US but did not have much success. After brainstorming the trends that would shape the clothing industry, he decided to focus on environment-friendly brands and thus started the brand Natural Issue. Supreme's clothing division grew to become an important part of the business. By 1993, George took the company public, at the time when sales crossed over $30 million. Some of the proceeds from the IPO was used to buy some branded clothing companies and start private labels as well. Supreme used computer-aided design to stay at the forefront of fashion trends. The designs were communicated to production facilities overseas who would then ship the finished product to warehouses in the US. This is how the company could churn out an impressive volume of apparel at cheaper prices. Revenues more than doubled in a span of a year. Although Supreme introduced new brands, it continued to pay attention to its Natural Issue brand. More product lines under that brand were added, such as underwear, sleepwear and jackets. By mid-1990s, Supreme had raised more money on the public markets to pay off its debts and started repurchasing its own shares. The newest trend to emerge was in the golf apparel category. Players such as Ralph Lauren and Tommy Hilfiger were already making moves in that market. Supreme obviously joined the trend by buying Munsingwear, the company that produced the famous Grand Slam shirt, with a penguin logo. That acquisition gave Supreme access to mass merchandisers in the golf space and thus secured its golf distribution channel. The smart acquisition and private label strategies took revenues to over $150 million by 1997. The company continued its strategy to grow and embarked on more licensing deals, like the one it had with PNB Nation. It stayed ahead of the curve by introducing its Munsingwear website and expanding into adjacent lifestyle wear categories. Supreme then purchased companies in the men's shirt segment, like the John Henry brand, to widen its product portfolio. By then, its brand could be found in stores ranging from Saks Fifth Avenue to Macy's, effectively having an entry point across the branding spectrum. Then in 1999, Supreme got to buy Perry Ellis at a bargain. To take advantage of the deal, Supreme changed its name to Perry Ellis International. George and Oscar believed that they could resurrect the Perry Ellis brand, which has been slipping away since the death of the famed designer. Perry Ellis continued the aggressive growth by acquisition strategy at the turn of the millennium and more iconic brands were licensed. Nike Swim Apparel, PGA Tour, Levi Strauss's Dockers. The list goes on. That strategy worked really well, with its market cap reaching around $1 billion by 2007. As always, I plotted some financials to track their progress through time. Revenues grew tremendously to over $800 million until the financial crisis hit. Nearly all retail companies took a huge hit. As the markets began to recover, retailers then became subject to rising competition from e-commerce companies. Perry Ellis sales started slipping away. They tried to remediate the situation by acquiring the Rafaela brand, a manufacturer of women's sportswear. But that did not really help. In 2013, the company announced a restructuring plan amid a sharp fall in profitability. It laid out a plan to focus on golf, sportswear and swim lines and expand internationally. Investment into digital platforms would also become a priority to counter eroding sales from e-commerce platforms. The company also shed out some smaller brands that were not accretive to the company. All of this was supposed to streamline operations and reduce overhead costs. But the plan had the opposite effect. The company recorded more losses. In 2014, Legion Partners, a minority investor, demanded that Perry Ellis consider a sale of the company. They argued that the family's control over the company led to poor financial performance. The chairman and CEO roles were split to give investors comfort. George stepped down as CEO, only to give his son the role the following year. By 2017, George was forced out of his chairman role as shareholders were still unhappy about the family's complacency in managing the company. Whilst profitability came back, revenues were still not picking up the pace. Ronda Accessories attempted a takeover of Perry Ellis, but it did not go through as a major licensor did not agree to the deal. Ronda has tremendous experience as a licensee for brands like Timberland, Tommy Hilfiger, Levi's. In my opinion, I think that Ronda would have been able to pull Perry Ellis out of lackluster performance. But George ended up buying out his own company for $437 million in mid-2018. George believes that he can better revamp the company whilst being private. Time will tell if he was right. Do you like any of their brands? What do you think Perry Ellis should do to ignite sales? Should the family bring in external help? As always, let us know what you think.